Okay, maybe this should be our new rule is don't take a break between the first and second half of the recording. That way we will ensure that we don't go like 3 hours because we'll have to pee so bad.
Hmm. I mean, like literally, if I have to pee badly enough, I will just like pause, get up, like move the camera away, so that because like full disclosure, I'm just wearing gym shorts.
Oh,
Yeah, I
I'm
mean,
I'm just surprised because you also have a beanie and a
well, that's
looks like a
because my
hoodie.
hair
So,
is
oh,
being
gotcha.
weird. I have a
Nice.
haircut scheduled for the 28th. I'm eating milk duds. Why am I eating milk duds right now?
Oh, nice.
A terrible idea.
Nice. Oh, that's right. I forgot I had some candy here. But I'm not in the mood for candy. I want chips.
Mm.
We have shrimp chips. Have you ever had shrimp chips?
I don't like shrimp.
Okay. Okay. It actually has a lot of garlic flavor to it, but it does have some fishiness, so you probably wouldn't like it then.
I don't. I used
Um,
to like shrimp. I used to like popcorn shrimp, and I used to just like
mhm.
shrimp. But it's like
Yep.
I just hit a point where it's like, oh, I don't like seafood.
Okay. Okay.
Like
Well, there you go.
we probably talked about this before, but yeah,
Probably.
seafood. It's my doesn't have enough legs rule. It's like it's like has to
I
have
think shrimps
so like,
have a ton of legs, don't they?
yeah.
How
Well,
many
oh
legs
no,
do
maybe it's
shrimps
that
have?
has too many legs rule
Oh, gotcha.
because it's
I
like
mean, like
listen, you have to
other
have
fish.
between 2 and 4 legs in order for me to eat you.
Gotcha. Okay. So it has to have a specific amount of legs.
Hmm.
Interesting. I've never heard that rule, but I guess that makes sense.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's not really the rule. I mean, it is because
Okay.
it makes me laugh, but it's
Hmm.
like I don't eat things out of the ocean.
Yeah.
I don't like poultry and like livestock.
Yeah.
I'll eat
Gotcha.
birds, like, and
Okay.
I'll eat cows and pigs and.
Have you ever had shark?
Mm-mm.
Okay. I was real young. I remember my dad had gotten some shark, did little like shark steaks. They were good. It wasn't amazing, but it was good. It's not fishy. I mean, slightly, but not very much at all. It's more meat consistency.
The one
But, anyways.
fish that I can kind of like stomach as a general rule.
Hmm.
I've had salmon and I don't completely hate it sometimes,
Okay.
but tuna, like tuna
Okay.
salad,
Yeah.
I can do fish sticks, but
Okay.
that's because it's like fried and breaded, and you bread and fry
Right.
anything, it's pretty much delicious.
Yes. Yes. That is true. That is true. Do they make deep fried salad? Because that, I don't know.
I mean, you
Might
can
be
deep
good.
fry pickles
Yeah.
and
And
cauliflower
okra.
and okra.
Cauliflower. Interesting. I don't know that I've
You've
had it
never had
before.
breaded cauliflower before?
Mm-mm.
Oh, dude, it's delicious. Like,
Okay.
if you like cauliflower, like I kind of like
I do.
cauliflower
Yeah.
anyways, but like they bread it and then they deep
Hmm.
fry it. It's awesome.
Nice.
But
Yeah.
Megan sometimes I got really mad because I don't like mushrooms, and she got an order of breaded mushrooms, and it looked just like the breaded
Yeah.
cauliflower, and I ate a breaded
Oh.
mushroom, and I wanted to
Yeah.
puke. I was so mad.
Okay. There are I've had fried mushrooms that have been hit or miss. When they're good, they're really good, and I do like mushrooms though. When
Mm,
they're good, they're really good. But I've had some that like it seemed like the batter just didn't have any salt in it.
mm.
And so it was almost like tasteless. It was just like, okay, it's a crunchy mushroom. Like just put salt on it and then it would be awesome. But yeah, no, they were very, very disappointing. So I think they can be hit or miss. But I also like mushrooms. We
Yeah,
have some in the fridge right now for some. I want to
mushrooms
do
are
some
weird and kind of
stir fry.
gross. They
To each
grow on
his own.
poop.
Sure.
I mean, lots of
Yeah,
things grow
that's
in
fine.
poop,
But
but like these
yeah,
specifically grow on poop.
mm, I mean, they can. it's not like it's not like they have to. Like that's a
I
requirement
mean, most
in order to harvest.
commercial mushrooms are grown on manure beds.
Oh, okay. Well, then any vegetable grows in poop.
In
Okay.
versus on. Okay, so like the plant puts down roots, grows up out, but like the mushroom sits right on top. Like, listen, I just don't like mushrooms, and so it's just the thing I say.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know about that one. I don't know
I
about that
wish I
one.
liked mushrooms because there's
I don't
actually
like the
like a lot of health
implication.
benefits for eating them.
Hmm.
Like they're
Yeah.
good for you,
Yeah.
and um, and sometimes I will like if there's mushrooms on a pizza, like sometimes I'll just like make myself eat some. Just 'cause I'm
Okay.
like, these are good for me, although I just think they're disgusting. And
Dude, that's crazy. Like I get the texture thing. Totally get it. My wife was like that when we first got married. She since
it's
is turned the
primarily the
corner on that.
texture. It's like chewing
Okay.
on boogers. Like it makes me want to gag. It's not like,
Yeah.
oh, like they taste awful because they don't have a taste really. Um, it's not true.
Oh, it's got
They do have
yeah.
a little bit of a taste, and
Yeah.
I'm not.
It's the umami. That's
Yeah,
it's a different kind of flavor.
it's like
But on dude, just like the mixture of like a marinara sauce, oh, and cheese, like mushrooms on a pizza are top shelf,
I
dude.
wish I liked them
That's
because it's
crazy.
like that. Like I like everything else about like I love green peppers and onions and like
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah. Dang.
but like mushrooms is just like nah, man. Like I've tried, like, and I try to make myself like well that's the thing. Like I have foods that I don't like, and I try to make myself like just try them every once in a
Hmm.
while, um, because like I know your palate changes, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's just like I have never been able to stomach mushrooms,
Gotcha.
like you know, um, before anyone patrons before like how do you know what boogers taste like? I'm just like saying like you've hawked up like that really like phlegmy garbage.
Hmm.
Like that's how I know what boogers are like,
Yeah, and chewed on it.
and spit it out.
Just like I do with mushrooms.
Yeah,
Uh,
pretty much. I'm like,
yeah.
yeah, like listen, it's still kind of gross, but it's yeah, whatever. Um, I'm just saying, it's like it's got like that weird like half chewy, just kind of. Ugh, ugh. It's uh, like tomatoes. Ugh.
Oh, dude.
I wish I
Yeah,
liked these
you're
things.
crazy,
Like
man.
I love tomato sauce, right?
Hmm.
I don't even really like ketchup. And like stewed
Okay.
tomatoes in like chili, like I'm down
Hmm.
with,
Yep.
right?
Okay. Yeah.
But it's just like, hey, you want some tomatoes on your salad? I'm like, you do you want
Hmm.
to fight? Like,
Oh,
you want
dude.
some tomatoes on your Subway sandwich? Do you want to fight?
Oh,
Um,
yes. Dude, no, you're crazy. You're crazy. Just that.
nah,
It's yeah. It's
it's
that's
it's a
good. It's
texture
nice and
thing.
refreshing. And okay, again, I get that. I understand that, but the flavor, man,
I
it's
don't
so
like
it's so good.
I don't know if it's because like I don't like the texture. I also don't like the
Hmm.
flavor.
Right,
Like
right. They kind of go hand in hand. I get it.
it's like, and I've had like bites of tomato that aren't like completely repulsive,
Hmm.
but it's again, it's just like yeah, like it's like
Yeah,
the one thing where it's like and again, I try to make myself eat things that I don't like because I'm like, oh, maybe I'll like it now, and it's like
yeah.
I ate some tomato. I feel like 6 months ago, and I wanted to, like I had to spit it out. I was like I was ready to like puke. Um,
I just wanted to kill myself.
it wasn't that bad, but it was like yeah, it was like my body has like a visceral reaction to this stuff. It's not even like
That's
oh,
crazy.
like it's like the one thing where it's like I can eat just about anything and I have
Yeah,
like no problems, but it's just like there are certain textures that like I'm just like with fish it's literally I just don't like the taste. Like
yeah. That's fair. That's fair. Yeah.
I just like seafood, I'm just like no.
Hmm.
Also like I tried to have like oysters and that was disgusting. I tried to eat
I've
an
never
oyster
done
one
that
time.
because it just doesn't sound good. Like I
Like
don't.
Even
I
I
don't even
tried
care
some
to
fried
try.
calamari one time. I was like, this is
Yeah.
disgusting. Like,
Okay. I think it's okay. It's weird. I don't the thing is I don't understand why. You know what I
it
mean? Like it's fun to try once. It's the same deal. I've had octopus sushi
mhm.
before. And it's like it's fun to just try it, but really at the end of the day, it's not good.
Yeah,
It's
that's what
tough
I'm saying
and
is like
chewy and it's
the
not very flavorful.
the fried
There's
calamari, it was like it actually like I think it has like a rubbery taste. Like I think
yeah,
it kind of tastes like rubber. And I'm like, "Oh, this
okay.
is like it's like it feels and kind of tastes like rubber." And then I found out that sometimes like what's calamari is actually like bleached and processed pig buttholes. Um
No way. Ugh, gross.
yeah, dude. It's like pig sphincters. Um
Yeah. Ugh.
and I listened to a whole podcast all about like how like so don't tell me I don't know what I'm
Oh
talking about.
goodness.
Like pig sphincters. Like listen, we're going down some sphincters. Some weird roads here.
Sphincter says what?
What?
Sphincter says what? Anyways,
Oh,
sorry.
oh.
Sorry.
You know what, man? I was
Wayne's
really
World. What?
bummed in the
Uh-oh.
pony Discord. I
Mhm.
threw out like a really sick Serenity slash
That's what that was a reference
Firefly
to. Yeah, no, right over my
reference,
head.
and
I don't know what you're
nobody
talking about.
got it because you all suck.
Yeah.
I was at
I mean,
least
I've
expecting
yeah.
Paul to get it.
Mhm.
Maybe he's not
Right.
paying attention to
Yeah.
me.
It could be it. It could be it.
Maybe
He's
he's
just too
mad
stoked
because I
for
got the.
tomorrow.
Maybe he's like he really wanted to bag on me about like Marvel Snap being like not around, and I was
Yeah.
like, I just got to. I just signed up for a month of VPN service, so suck it. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, I'm
That's
looking
probably
here.
it.
Like man, yeah, mm, it was. I'm responding definitely part of it. Wesley was like, "Was the VPN because of Snap?" And I said, "It was definitely part of it."
Yeah.
Um,
There you
it
go,
wasn't the
man.
only reason. Like I was telling Josh, I,
Gotta
I
get some of that snap.
I've been curious as to how they work and how involved it would be. Um, Partially because like you can use VPNs to access like content from other countries.
Right.
Uh, Using some streaming services and things like that. So I kind of looked into it and I don't really, and I was like, well, I want to check this out a little bit. And so it's like, hey, you know, so that's what I'm doing. I'm checking out it. And it also doesn't make me mad that I can play Marvel Snap now. Cause like,
Mhm.
listen, they freaking brought back the brain rot already. Like that's so weak. It's so weak. It's so, like one the U.S. government. I'm not thrilled about the fact that the U.S. government is like, hey, we're just gonna ban a whole social media platform. I'm like, ooh, don't like that. That's not awesome. I understand why they did it,
Mhm.
because pretty much every Chinese company pretty much works for the the Chinese government, whether they want
Right.
to or not. Um,
Right.
they are all agents of the state.
It's kind of how communism works, yes.
Yes, that's just how communism.
Nature of
It's
the
like
beast.
it's
It's not private enterprise.
no such thing. Um, so like, and I get it, but it's like you guys probably should have just said, hey, this isn't allowed in. Period. Like, because China does that with all sorts of stuff. They're like, you can't do that in here.
Sure.
And I think it would have
Yeah.
been perfectly fine to be like, hey, that social media app that you want everybody to use, suck it, get out of here,
Mhm.
like get bent. Like we're not allowing it unless you sort of return the favor and you just like let us in unfettered. Oh, you're not going to do
Mhm.
that? Well, sucks to suck, pal. Like,
Yeah.
but I also think like TikTok is literally the most cancerous of all the brain rot social media garbage.
Mhm.
So I hate it. I probably hate it the most. Josh and I were having a brief discussion, and it's just like social media as a general rule, it's not all bad, but most people probably shouldn't have access to it. Like you use
Mhm.
the alcohol comparison. And I think
Yeah.
that's not a bad one. I feel like it's like, I don't know, man. I think alcohol, like it sort of breaks down because alcohol, they're actually like more beneficial things with alcohol than
Well, right.
social
So
media.
so that's okay, since you brought it up, this is something I've been kicking around for the past week or so, is that it just, I don't know. I don't know how I came across it, but it popped in my head. And I think I think there's a correlation, at least for me, between social media, doom scrolling, whatever. But let's just say social media and alcohol. In that, in small quantities, I think both can be beneficial. I think of social media for the reasons that you have social media is to keep up with friends. I think, for instance, this podcast, we met each other through social
Hmm.
media. We keep in touch, Discord. We have some good friends that we've
Hmm.
made through social media. So there are benefits
Hmm.
to that. I think keeping up with friends back in Texas, some friends we haven't hung out with in years, just to see their kids growing up, stuff like that. As they've adopted more kids, like, I think there are benefits to social media in moderation, in the same way that I think there are benefits to alcohol, whether it's just, as scripture says, to make the heart glad. I think of it as a social lubricant, in that it helps to just kick back, or not have as many walls up,
Hmm.
with people. You can eat easier. You can slip into conversation a little bit easier with some alcohol.
It's an uninhibitor.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Which can have its downfalls for sure. But I think, in moderation, I think it's actually helpful. So that said, th- I think I also likened it, and this is the reason why I was thinking of alcohol. Is actually probably the first conclusion that I came to. Is I think actually an overuse of social media is like drunkenness. That was the first correlation that I had,
Hmm.
is because you get lost in it, the doom scrolling and stuff like that. I know for me, I've experienced where one of my kids will come up to me, "Hey, Dad, take a look at this, or look at what I've made." And I'm just looking at my phone, and I'm like, "Here, wait a second, wait a second. I'm doing something real quick." And I stop and I think, "What? But wait, 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 wait. What am I doing? I'm not doing anything." The reason I said that is because I just want to continue scrolling, like, not because there's actually something worth my time on this thing. And to me, I think the correlation between that and drunkenness is a lot stronger, is because, like, I lose track of time when you're doom scrolling. You don't remember much of what happens when you're doom scrolling,
Hmm.
because it's not like it's fun in the moment. Oh, I learned this tidbit of information, or what, or oh, that's a funny meme, or
But
whatever.
you don't even retain most of that.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Exactly. It's so, and I think for certain people, certain social media feeds, just like they're angry drunks, I think there are people that surf social media just to get pissed off,
Hmm.
just to read about what people that they disagree with are doing, and make fun of that, So to me, there is a strong correlation there. It might be a little extreme. I get that might
Well,
not be the case for
I
everyone,
think
but
social media is a little, again, I would say alcohol, I think when you look at the benefits, like they are both things that can lend themselves to abuse. But I would
yeah,
say, like, I think alcohol, even when you like look at like red wine, is really good for you. Like a glass of
yes,
red wine
hmm
a couple times a week cuts back on like heart disease, all sorts of stuff.
hmm
Beer, when consumed appropriately, has lots of good macros. There's oh, daggone it, silicates. It's a great source of silicates, which is like good for your bones and teeth
Interesting.
and nails, or maybe not teeth, but like you can get silicates from beer,
hmm
which are good for you. Again, in
Nice.
limited quantities, like, you know,
Right.
um,
Yes.
as long as you're like, you know, now there are trade-offs because some beers, it's like you drink one beer and it's pretty much you just ate like half a loaf of bread. Um,
Right. Yes, that is
but
the case.
um, even like, you know, now liquors, it's a little harder, like, you know, but like again, like there aren't as many. Uh, yeah, like
Mhm.
wine, it's like, well, this is kind of healthy for you, and like the tannins and everything else, like these things are not necessarily like whiskey. Just tastes good. I don't know if there are any like really health benefit. Like it's like, and even there, it's like it's kind of like here's the thing that's always like kind of struck me. It's like I like black coffee. That's an acquired taste. I like IPAs. That's an acquired taste. I like whiskey. That's an acquired taste. Uh, you know, none of the things I like. It's like there's like a series, like a there's a set of time where it's like you kind of like struggle through to get to this thing, and then when you finally do,
Mhm.
you're like, I enjoy this thing. But it's almost
Yep.
like Stockholm syndrome, where it's like it's like
Yep.
there's I'm broken. Um, but yeah,
Yep.
so
Well, as Willy Wonka said, candy is dandy, but liquor is quicker.
whoa, Willy Wonka
So,
said that.
yeah, Willy Wonka said that.
What?
Great movie, by the way.
Which one?
Which
Gene Wilder
the
or
first,
Johnny?
yeah, Gene
Gene
Wilder
Wilder, yeah.
for sure. I think it's Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or is that the name of the book? Maybe it's Willy. I think the movie is Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. The book is Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. The movie is Willy Wonka and the
Was that
Chocolate
Roald Dahl?
Factory. Yes.
Hmm.
Hmm. Yep. Movies Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Fun fact: the director, I believe, of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory had only ever done documentaries before that movie.
That's kind of wild.
Yeah, and Gene Wilder required he actually it was not in the script that when Willy Wonka first appears on screen that he falls over and then he does the
Oh, the
somersault and
tumble.
stands back up. Yeah, that was all Gene Wilder, and he required that be in the movie and that be the first scene with Willy Wonka, or he would not do the movie because he said he did not want the audience to know Willy Wonka's motives. He did not want to play a character that was either like, oh, just nod and wink, like none of this is really real. I'm really your friend, or like altogether evil, like the Grizzly Reaper is mowing kind of a thing, just like a character that you can't pin down,
I
which I
think
think is a stroke of genius.
that's why
I
it's
like
the
that movie.
best. Well, it's like, one, I should probably stop chewing into the microphone. I'm sure the patrons love that. Um,
Milk dud.
Milk Duds, like, dude, it's kind of like garbage candy, but I love it. Like, it's not like really like high quality candy. Like, you can get a whole big thing of Milk Duds for $1.
Mhm.
Why? Because it's garbage. Um, but I still love it. Um, it's not like good caramels. It's not like good chocolate, but it's like
Mhm.
I'll eat the crap out of Milk Duds. Um,
Yep.
Probably terrible for my teeth. I don't care. Um, yeah, like Johnny Depp's Willie was just too. What was Johnny Depp? It was Johnny Depp doing like Johnny Depp is basically like the same in pretty much every role. Where it's like Jack Sparrow is Edward Scissorhands, is him doing Willy Wonka. It's a little bit kind of like Faye,
Mhm.
effeminate, kind of just spacey freak show psychedelics, like
Mhm.
like somebody did entirely too much acid. Um,
Yeah,
that's
that's fair.
Johnny Depp just brings like that to just pretty much every role I've ever seen him in.
Mhm.
Um, I'm not saying but that's like the bulk of what he does is just like it's all like variants of like Jack Sparrow or Edward Scissorhands or it's kind of like it's like even the Mad Hatter thing. It's kind of like
Yep.
in that out. It's the same thing. It's just like it's kind of like it's like maybe the wavelength dips and rises a little bit, but it's pretty much like you're one note, pal.
Mhm.
Now that one note is intriguing. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, the Timothy Chalamet, is that one out yet? Isn't he?
Yeah.
Was it,
I mean,
is it any good?
been out for a while. I had heard it was good, but I never saw it.
But yeah, Gene Wilder is like just like that. That like, is he a madman or sort of a magician or a little bit of both? And it's like,
Mhm.
it's wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah. So good.
Mhm.
Fantastic movie.
But
Um, oh, there was something I was going to mention and I don't remember what it was. Oh, that's what it is. Okay. Did you ever see Harry Potter was probably way after your time. Did you watch the Harry Potter movies?
some of them,
Okay. Did you ever watch
actually, I've
the
seen all of them. Yeah, but
Okay.
I can't
The
remember
fall
any of them.
Yeah, the I'm not huge on Harry Potter. It's fine. It's fine. My wife really likes it. You know, kids like it.
I'm a
I
contrarian.
just think it's fine.
See,
I
like,
just think
here's
it's
the
fine.
thing. And so when everybody's like, it's the best thing ever, I'm like, is it?
Mhm.
Actually, that thing kind of sucks. So,
Yeah.
like, yeah,
I
anyway,
don't yeah, I wouldn't go that far. I just think it's fine.
yeah.
Um
I
did
mean,
you ever
if I'm
see
being honest, I'm like, it's fine. It's not my favorite, but it's fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyways,
Um the follow-up movies, which I think are prequels, but the Fantastic Beasts,
no.
did you ever watch any of those? Okay.
I know that
Okay.
Depp was in those, though.
Yes. Yeah. And it had my wife and I laughing out loud when we saw this was years ago when we saw the first one because the bad guy is this character, you don't know what's going on. Anyways, at the end of the movie there's this fight scene or whatever and then he gets, blasted or whatever. And then he stands back up and it's Johnny Depp. And I think he has like gray hair or something like that. And I just turn to my wife and I say, it was secretly Johnny Depp the whole time. Like the bad guy was secretly Johnny Depp the whole time. And the movie like plays it up like, oh no, it's this huge reveal. But they never actually like told you who Johnny Depp, like they had never showed Johnny Depp up to that point. So it's like even if you know the bad guy, that there's this bad guy lurking around in the shadows somewhere, like you've heard his name, but you've never seen his face.
Hmm.
But the way it's revealed in the movie is not like, oh, it's that character. It's like it's just Johnny Depp. And then later, they go on to explain stuff. But it was just really funny for us when we watched it because now that's kind of like a thing that we say to each other is that, oh yeah, it was secretly Johnny
It
Depp the
was
whole time.
secretly Johnny Depp the whole time.
Yeah. And yeah, so if you ever watch that movie,
Well,
I just spoiled it for you, but
I'm never going to watch it. So,
it's not going to happen.
yeah.
Awesome.
It's funny. Like sometimes Megan will say, like, "What if Byron wants?" I'm like, "Well, then he can watch it with somebody else." Like, I mean, there are a lot of things I will do with that boy that I probably would not do for anyone else, excluding possibly my wife.
Mhm.
But there are a lot of things where it's like, listen, sometimes people are like, you should do this thing. And I'm like, I have zero. Like, it's a very Ron Swanson esque kind of like, I have zero interest in that thing. I'm not going to
Mhm.
do it. So
Mhm.
I just kind of look at them like, no. Like,
It's not going to
they're like,
happen.
oh, and I'm like, no, you don't understand. Like, that is not an option. That thing will not happen. Yeah, I will be like, you could point a gun at me and say, yeah, and this is a gross exaggeration, but it's like
Mhm.
short of like threatening my life, like I am not even remotely interested in. And
Mhm.
again, it's like I just thought the Harry Potter stuff like was fine, and it wasn't
Mhm.
any better than that. Like, and I just didn't understand where people like make it their whole identity. Like,
Right.
this is gonna be like me bagging on some people, but I think it was the Sheologians were like they would
Okay.
like gush about Harry Potter every once in a while. And I just
Really?
wanted to be like, I think so. I could be wrong.
Mhm.
But I just feel like that's and I just remember just one time like just viscerally like rolling my eyes Just like, I love Harry Potter so much. It's so good. And I was like, ugh. Like the Robert Downey Jr. Just like I rolled my eyes so hard, I think I gave myself like lazy eye or something. Like I was just like, I don't, and maybe that's just again, like I don't believe in like contrary to popular belief. I don't think like, oh, just be contrarian to be contrarian. But it's like, I do sort of like when people are like, this thing is awesome. I'm like, is it really? Like, that thing's pretty mid in my opinion. No, and yeah, but yeah, opinion is subjective and all those fun things. So yeah,
yeah.
except for Sonic, that is objectively bad all the time,
I might have more to say about that
with little to no exception
in the bro hang, but or whatever we want to call it. I mean, I don't know. We're already 30
Well,
minutes in, whatever this is.
Here's the thing: is like this is just like the preamble. This is like a little bit of
Right.
extra sauce, and I think we've given them probably like 20 to 30 minutes on both ends. So I think just a standard bro hang, and like after this, and I would be comfortable saying like we're caught up, unless the patrons demand more, and at which point in time we'll be like, good luck with that.
Do you really need it though?
do you really? Like we give you so much. So yeah. So let's get into the rest of this, and then we'll do a bro hang, and we'll call it a night, and then you can get up in 5-ish hours
later. Yeah.
At this point, like I'm looking at it, for me that would be about 5 hours from now. But if I had to get up at 5:30.
Right. Yeah. So right now in Iowa it's 11:30. So I have Bible study in 6 hours. So
yes.
I'm guessing at this point that probably means more like maybe 3 hours of sleep.
Nah, we'll try to cut it off. Like you need to be up by 5:30. So
no, I have to be there at 5:30.
No, I mean you have to be there at 5:30. So you need to be up at like 5.
5, yeah, it's probably the best.
So
at least give me time to brush my teeth.
We're gonna be cutting it close. All right, let's not.
But that's okay. That's okay. No. I made this decision.
You made this
I'm
decision.
okay with it. Yeah, I'll make it through. Like it's okay. I was half joking, but I mean it. Like for real. Is like I think this is worth it. Between hanging out, doing this, and hanging out with guys and reading Romans, like I actually do think it's worth it. I'm not saying it's the healthiest choice. I'm saying I will make it up later. And that's fine.
It's like as long as you don't do this like super consistently,
right?
It's fine. And like you can grab a nap later, or an energy drink.
I do have a couch in my office.
I default to energy drinks.
Nice. I just drink coffee all day, or not all day. I usually cut it off afternoon, but
yeah. But all right,
maybe not tomorrow.
Let's just jump into this.
Okay. Cool.
All right. And we're back. All right, folks. So now you've sat through the first half of the show, all the preamble, all the media reporting, all the backlog report stuff, all of it. All of it. It's you're here for now it's time for the beef. You want to know where's the beef? Where's the meat? And here it is. So that was pretty anticlimactic, wasn't
Steaming pile of beef.
It was just, it's vanilla. It reminds me of that. For some reason, you said the way you said that, and what happened, what popped in my head was that scene from Friends where Rachel makes the custard, but it's also got like beef and frozen peas and carrots in it too, and it's disgusting, but Joey loves it, and he's like,
nice.
Custard, good. Jam, good. Beef, good. And it's just like, our meat, good. And it was like, but for whatever reason, that's what popped in my head. It was weird association. I don't even like Friends. I think Friends is garbage television. There's a hot take.
That's not
I
here.
think
I
completely
totally agree with you.
non-controversial. Um,
Yeah.
but but we're gonna be talking
I
about
think it's vanilla.
it, you went there
Heyo.
again. We're going to be talking about VanillaWare, which is anything but vanilla, really. I think this is a
Mhm,
pretty outstanding studio with maybe one or two sort of semi glaring omissions. Mostly a
mhm.
design choice in one particular title, but we'll get there when we get there.
Huh,
So,
huh.
but Josh, it looks like you got some stuff pulled up there. So why don't you give us a little bit of an overview of VanillaWare here, friend?
Yeah, so VanillaWare is a Japanese studio. It is known mostly by one of its creators. Okay, I believe last I had heard, or at least in my research, that there are 29 people employed at VanillaWare. So it's a small Japanese studio, but one of the original creators is also he does a lot of the art design as well. His name is Joji Kamatani, or he goes by George Kamatani. And so some of the distinctive style of a lot of the games comes from this guy. There's a whole story that we don't necessarily have to go into, but he's been in the video game space since he was a teenager. Um, Part of it, I don't want to go to. This is a family friendly podcast, right? I will say that he worked on some adult material in video games early on in his career that might inform some of his design choices, and help to kind of understand some of the choices that he makes. Um, Unfortunately, however, I think this helps to frame VanillaWare as a studio in my mind because of their striking art design in general, both for good, mostly good, but also for bad at times. But I think when you see a VanillaWare title, you recognize that it is VanillaWare. One fun little anecdote about the name VanillaWare. I didn't know this until I started kind of researching for this episode. The reason it's called VanillaWare, Joji himself had said that vanilla is the best-selling, most endearing flavor of ice cream. So he wants to make video games that are well known, that endure throughout time, that are very well crafted, so that they can be the kind of time honored and go on, so that he can have a legacy. The same way that vanilla ice cream is known as like the ice cream flavor, which I think makes a lot of sense, right? Unfortunately, here in English, vanilla is also kind of a euphemism, kind of, milk
For
toast.
bland or boring, yeah, or just
Right,
like middle of the
exactly.
road, and which is kind of like when you have a really good vanilla ice cream,
Yeah.
it's like I think it's like it's kind of like it's default ice cream is what
Hmm.
people think of, but it's like
Yeah.
really good vanilla is outstanding. Like
Yes.
there's like basic and boring vanilla,
Hmm.
but a good vanilla ice cream is vanilla's got like is a good flavor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally agree. Like vanilla Tootsie Rolls, so good. Come on, man.
Hmm.
Anyway, the little blue ones. Anyways, I
Okay.
completely agree,
That's
and I think
that
that's
is
what he's going for.
a weird take. I did not know about, but like I like the orange ones personally.
Oh, the orange ones are good too.
Like I
Yeah.
like the orange ones, and you take them. Oh, actually, with the vanilla or with the chocolate.
Ooh, I don't know
And
that I've ever done that before, but
oh,
with the
dude,
vanilla and the orange, yeah.
get like
Creamsicle in your
a little
mouth.
bit of creamsicle action going on. I
I
also
love it.
like chocolate and orange. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, that's a
Yeah.
big thing for
Interesting.
me. So
Oh man, these are some great combinations, but the game studio VanillaWare, that's where they came up with the
okay,
name for the studio. This studio has also had a good number of ups and downs throughout its history. It came up out of the ashes of a previous studio that George had started, that basically went bankrupt. And throughout its history, throughout releasing different games, they have run out of money a couple of times. So they've always been kind of on the edge. And it's funny, just as I've looked over their games, they actually haven't released as many games as I assumed that they had. Um, Only a handful of games, especially here in North America. It isn't until recently where they've really kind of done well financially. I say that Odin Sphere did really well, but they almost immediately kind of blew all their money on the next game. But anyways, we can get into some of that as we talk about each of the games as they come up. But it is an interesting studio. I'd say outside of kind of who they are and what they do, this Japanese studio with this striking art style, I would say, and you can push back on this if you want to, it seems like a Japanese corollary, I would say, to oh my goodness, of like Supergiant games, where they have a very like you can tell a Supergiant game. It's not a big studio, but what they do, they really pour into the quality of the game, and it just has a very distinct feel for it. It's just in this case, it's very Japanese.
Yeah, I can see that. I don't. Yeah, it's not like a one to one or 100% corollary, but I can definitely see that they're both they have very distinct products that it's like,
Hmm.
oh no, this is a VanillaWare game, this is a Supergiant game, like,
Yeah.
and you can see they have their sort of own distinctives. Um,
Right. Right. Even when they try something like totally different
mhm,
mechanically,
yeah,
it still feels like that type of game. That's what I've heard about Pyre. I've never actually played Pyre, but it still feels super giant.
yeah.
Whereas a lot of the VanillaWare games have that feel as well.
No, and I would say like I think both of them. I wouldn't even say like both of them are very visually distinct.
Hmm.
Like like I think that the primary sort of mark on a VanillaWare game, just sort of like even looking at the Supergiant versus VanillaWare comparison, is the primary distinction with VanillaWare is the just their art style. They've got
Hmm.
a pretty the design philosophy and the key artists, like they've got a pretty uniform style. Like
Hmm.
I'm trying to, but whereas I would say one of the key distinctives for Supergiant is the music. Supergiant's
Okay.
music
Yeah,
is always like
that's
the
fair.
distinguishing thing. Like it's just, even though each one of those the games has a uniquely distinct soundtrack and style and vibe, it's like, oh no, like as soon as I hear that, I'm like, that's yeah, that's got like I can't remember their music director's name off the top of my head, but it's like
Yeah.
it's one guy's like singular vision. And I would even say like, and that's sort of like the parallel is that VanillaWare, it's George's singular vision that as far as like the visual aesthetic.
Hmm.
It
Yeah.
really defines and informs everything. So yeah, they're, and I would say like both of them too. The other parallel, and again, now that you've got me kind of thinking about this, is that
Hmm.
both of them tend to make sort of like these cult classics. Up until Hades, uh, Supergiant stuff was like beloved, but not
Hmm.
critically successful. Like
Okay.
not even no, it was critically successful, and I think it was like successful to a certain extent, but it wasn't like explosive. Like I think Hades really kind of like Hades was a big stinking deal and made them a
Right.
lot of money.
Yeah.
Um, I don't, and I know Odin Sphere was pretty popular, but I don't know that VanillaWare has kind of hit that. And I haven't looked at the numbers. I've heard Unicorn Overlord did pretty well for them as
Yeah.
well.
Hmm.
But again, I think they're both sort of like kind of hit that like these are cult classic kind of games where
Yeah.
it's like they have a pretty rabid fan base, but it's not the explosive success that bigger, more mainline titles kind of hit. Like you know,
That's true. I don't think it's necessarily like mainstream. Unicorn Overlord, I feel like would be kind of the biggest, the closest that they've gotten to mainstream success. But I think just the 1-2 punch of Aegis Rim and then Unicorn Overlord feels as though they actually have a lot of good momentum. Whereas Aegis Rim, yeah, I agree. It's a critical darling, but I don't know that it necessarily is it is more of a niche game, and so I don't think it's something that everyone kind of jumped on. Oh, okay, yeah, VanillaWare is great. Also, I think they kind of toned down a little bit of the kind of the stylistic vision that they have. Now, maybe that's just because it's supposed to be like that game is more centered around a time and place in Japan, or times and places, as opposed to the more fantasy settings of their previous games. But even Unicorn Overlord, I feel like the art direction was more toned down than some of the stuff that they've done in the past. But my understanding is that Unicorn Overlord was not directed by George. I believe it was one of the other directors there that did Unicorn Overlord. But
So both of them, like, and here's a just like this is just like quick Google searches kind of thing.
mhm,
But back in 2023 or 2023, uh, Aegis Rim hit about a little over 1 million copies. I don't know how many.
okay,
So that's a couple years ago. But all I can see as far as like sales numbers for Unicorn is it hit 1 million sales fairly shortly after its sort of release. But again, I
wow,
can't find any more numbers.
okay,
I'm not like digging. Anyways, so
yeah,
and again, I think that sort of fits that like cult classic kind of narrative where it's
yeah,
like these are smaller, kind of more niche products.
mhm,
But again, the fan bases are really pretty. Um, I don't want to use the word rabid, but
mhm,
they're ardent supporters of these products.
yeah, yeah,
So and and I would say that both of us kind of fall maybe me more so than you, but both
mhm,
of us kind of fall into that camp where we really like the stuff that VanillaWare has done.
yeah, yeah. I'm definitely really interested in it. And that so there's just a couple things that I want to talk about real quickly. Now that we've talked about kind of who they are as a company, what makes their games special, and a lot of that to me revolves around the art because each game is different. Okay, and we'll talk about each game. But before we get there, I think kind of some through lines is the art styling is very striking and different. I think it is still obviously very Japanese, kind of that manga anime inspired art. But in the same way, I can't think of his name and I feel like a jerk. But the same, the artist who did Final Fantasy Tactics and that the way that is very striking. Um, but it's not only the art style, but I think the use of color as well within the artwork is also very striking. There's lots of bright colors that are used, especially with a lot of fantastical, some of the more fantastical games. So, and it's very lush and vibrant color throughout the artwork of a lot of these games. And then finally, it has to do with the animation as well, is that they are 2D games. So far, that's all that VanillaWare has made is only 2D games. But the way that they animate their characters is different than, frankly, almost anything else that I have seen in video games. Um, Case in point, most of their characters are breathing when they're on screen. And the way that they animate that breath and the way that they take that 2D image and kind of distort it slightly to make it look as though the character is breathing, it feels, I don't know if I want to say storybook like, but it feels not even uncanny, slightly otherworldly, but you recognize like what it is, what it's trying to communicate, and it does it well. But in a way that's just different than things, the other things that I've seen. So
Yeah,
those are some hallmarks to me.
yeah. Now that you're talking about like the way that characters move, and there's sort of a fluidity, and
Hmm.
it's definitely
That's a
sort of
good way of putting it.
exaggerated,
Hmm.
like the breathing. It's like yeah, it's very noticeable. Like you don't breathe like that in real life, but
Hmm.
it does sort of add a little. It adds. life to the screen. And I think
Right.
actually I would say like I think they do have like all of those games do have like sort of a storybook feel.
Okay.
I think that's actually like a good, and I think actually Odin Sphere
Hmm.
actually in some ways treats itself as a story. Yeah,
Okay.
part of the mechanic of Odin Sphere is like you're exploring these different like stories, and so they're
Hmm.
like that does tie in. But yeah, it's a very it you know I use this word a lot, but it just like it's a style that oozes charm,
Hmm.
and yeah, so yeah, that really is the key sort of hallmark is again that visual style, and it. But then
Hmm.
again, just we were talking a little bit off camera, and I just said even the way that dragons, crowns, backgrounds move, the way
Hmm.
that like it's really pretty striking. Um, there's a lot of visual flair in all of these games that I think, uh, frankly, you know, like a lot like it's probably one of my favorite things is just
Yeah.
like the it's not even attention to detail, like, but it's just there's a lot of care put into these sequences and just making like even the way characters move and everything else. So yeah,
Hmm.
it's yeah,
It is pretty funny that you're listening to a podcast where we're trying to describe
just go
the
Google.
special things. Right. I would say first, yeah, Google some of these games and pull up some images, but then also look at some gameplay because it also has to do with you use the word fluidity. The fluidity of the characters in action is also another level of I think what makes this team especially unique and special. So, anyways, I wanted to touch on that before we dive into the games themselves. But with that said, let's go ahead and take a look at some of these games. It is being a Japanese company. VanillaWare has released a few games in Japan only that we're not really going to be talking about because neither of us have any experience with those games. I'm sure you can find English patches and do all that fun stuff if you really want to. But we did none of that in preparation for this episode because we just wanted to talk about our experiences and what we think about the games that we have played, not necessarily dig into games. Like one of these games is like an online PSP game that was never released over here. Like I'm never gonna play it, guys. Like it's just I'm not interested in that at all. Um, well, I take that back. I'm slightly interested in it, but I'm not enough to actually put in the
Not
time to
enough to
try and
figure
look
out
into it.
how you can make that work. Yeah.
Right, right, exactly. So, anyways, the first game, and this is here's another interesting anecdote. Okay, the first two games that this studio released within a month of each other. Grim Grimoire and Odin Sphere, released within a month of each other in 2007 on PlayStation 2. The reason for that is because Odin Sphere, the first like major game that the studio created, was shelved. Sort of, it was pushed back by Atlas because when it was done, it would have. Atlas was saying it's going to interfere with our flagship game that we're releasing this year, Persona 3, and so it kind of needs to move out of the way until after our release cycle for Persona 3. So then Odin Sphere had a set date, and because the company wanted to work on something and needed an influx of cash, they started making another game, and that was Grim Grimoire. And Grim Grimoire had a 6-month development cycle. So, in its original release, Grim Grimoire was not necessarily it wasn't as polished as as a lot of the other games that they made. They have since made a re-release, somewhat of a remake of the game
Hmm.
in Grim Grimoire once more that retools a number of things in the game, or so I've heard. I've never actually played the game. And so that apparently is the version to play. It's kind of a take on StarCraft. It's a storybook.
It's a real
This
time
one actually
strategy.
yeah, yeah. The devs in within VanillaWare like to play StarCraft, and so they wanted to kind
Mm.
of make their own version of it. That was kind of the heart behind it. Again, 6-month dev cycle, so a bit of a smaller game, but I've heard it's charming in its own right. I think again the art style is pretty cool. Even if you can tell it's kind of it's not that it's not a full game, but it is it does not push too hard into it doesn't dig into its systems as much as a lot of other games could, although that might not be the case for the remake that recently came out within the past couple of years. But Grim Grimoire came out, and then a month later, Odin Sphere came out. Everyone loved Odin Sphere. It sold really well, and they actually made money. So,
Yeah.
um, have
It,
you played either Grim or have you played Grim Grimoire? I'll ask you that first.
I have not played
Okay.
a substantial amount. I owned it back on the PS2. I played a
Okay.
little bit of it. It didn't stick with me.
Mm-hmm.
Just because,
Mm-hmm.
like, listen, real-time strategy games on a console are always kind of tricky. Um,
Yep.
so I'm interested in going back to it,
Mm-hmm.
but like I said, when I that's the one, like looking at their games here, that's probably the stateside games. That's probably the one I know the least about.
Okay.
Um, I have played and or beaten everything else.
Okay.
I've beaten, like, just sort of looking at the other list. It's Odin Sphere, Muramasa, Dragon's Crown, and 13 Sentinels. I have played
Mm-hmm.
and beaten Odin Sphere and Muramasa. I adore both of
Okay.
them. I've played Dragon's Crown, haven't beaten it yet, and same with 13 Sentinels. I'm probably about halfway through 13 Sentinels.
Okay.
I
Nice.
think, but yeah. So I've played I've played everything that they've released stateside, but I don't I haven't played enough of Grim Grimoire to have much of an opinion, and that was like 20 years ago, um, or
Okay. Yeah.
longer. Well, it says 2007, 2012. Wait, no, I'm just kind of like, full disclosure. I'm using Wikipedia here to sort of like give me a little bit. So 2002, 2006. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, like 20 years ago.
Yep.
In that
Yep.
ballpark. So yeah, but Odin Sphere was kind of interesting. Is that I did buy that. I actually owned that before I owned the original Persona 3. Um,
Okay. Yeah.
and I'm trying to just checking here, because at the time I was really big into. I knew about, so I picked up Grim Grimoire because Nippon Ichi or NIS published that, and I used to buy
Mm-hmm.
pretty much anything that they published.
Okay.
Actually, they have some collections available on the Switch now of some of their
Mm-hmm.
older games that I want to go back and pick up, because I loved pretty much, like, I loved Disgaea, but I also
Okay.
really, Nippon Ichi was doing some really interesting stuff. I mean, in hindsight, it's pretty kind of samey. Lots of
Sure.
lots of turn-based tactical RPG stuff, like,
Mm-hmm.
um, but I picked up Odin Sphere, and I remember just being completely obsessed with that game.
Okay.
It's got
Okay.
like it's a 2D side scrolling like beat 'em up, but it's got some
Mm-hmm.
RPG elements, and it's got this. There's 5 or 6 different characters, and you play through their storylines, and you kind of like dip in and out of each one of the stories, because it's not a, like, there's a chronological timeline for all of them, but these 5 or 6 different stories are happening all at the same time. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and it's pretty special, pretty charming,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just it's a I wouldn't I don't think technically the gameplay is really like that impressive.
Okay.
At least I don't like. Now, I played it. I replayed it a few years ago, and I remember thinking it was like competent, and it was good, but it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't like amazing. Uh,
Gotcha.
but yeah, I think it's just like it's charming game, really pretty great style. It's kind of set in this quasi Norse mythology kind of, like, it's a
Right.
telling of the Ragnarok saga, and
Okay. Okay.
kind of. Uh, it's very loosely based on Norse mythology and Ragnarok. Um,
Sure.
So yeah, it's a yeah, but
Okay.
it's a great game. I I liked it so much that when they did the re-release, there was like a fancy steelbook version, and
Hmm.
I bought that because
Nice.
I like those things, and I like that game, and so yeah, in fact I pretty much bought that. I bought it on PS2. I bought it for my Vita. Well, I bought it for my Vita and for PS4, and then again the steelbook. So that's I used to do
Oh
that a
wow.
lot.
Yeah.
I just buy like multiple
Double
copies
dipping.
of the same game. Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
I want it on all the things. I do think too there was like crossplay between the
Okay.
Vita and the PS4 version.
Okay.
So like you could or cross save so that you could
Ah, take it on the
yeah,
go.
take it on the go and
Yeah.
upload. So I do think I did a fair bit of that, but yeah,
There
I
was a
think
point to it.
Odin Sphere, yeah, it wasn't just complete insanity. It was just mostly insane. Um, but Odin Sphere, like, it's really great. It's I think the common touch point though for you and I, we were both big fans of Muramasa,
Right.
and we both
Right.
think it's frankly criminal that they haven't brought that forward. But I was doing some digging around, and so it's like
Hmm.
they have jumped
Mm.
around with publishers. Now, Atlas has
Right. Right.
done the majority of their publishing.
Hmm.
Atlas published, Atlas published Odin Sphere, but they also published 13 Sentinels and Unicorn Overlord.
Okay. Okay.
But in looking at this, Nippon Ichi did Grim Grimoire,
Hmm.
and Marvelous did Muramasa.
Okay.
And so and I'm trying to just think. And so I'm thinking that it could be, and Dragon's Crown was also Atlas.
Okay.
Um,
Okay. Wow. So Atlas got the ones that sold well, where because kind of the story behind this, and not to go into depth because I can't, frankly, is that they've just been a very volatile studio. They spend money lavishly on their dev cycles, like they kind of spare no expense when they're creating games. And so they're basically gambling on that their games are going to do well. It's what brought under some of the games. Odin Sphere is actually a spiritual successor to a game, Princess Crown, that came out in Sega Saturn in Japan that did not do well at all and basically bankrupted the company at the time. But George wanted to make a spiritual successor to that, and so they were working on Odin Sphere for a long time. But again, this thing with Atlas came up. Yes, we want to publish it, but we can't do it now. We're gonna have to kick the can down the road, and so they do this. They make Grim Grimoire, okay, and then someone else publishes it. You just said who it was. It wasn't Nippon Ichi, but it was
oh, Marvelous.
Marvelous did Grim Grimoire, or was
Oh
it
no,
Nippon Ichi?
no. Grim Grimoire was Nippon Ichi.
Okay, there you go.
Muramasa was Marvelous.
So that's how, because they needed something else out, they went to a different publisher who published this game that was made in 6 months, um, or at least with the 6 month dev cycle. Excuse me. So then Odin Sphere comes out. They do pretty well with that. So it is funny to see like the different publishers, which also speaks to the time. We were there because we're older guys. But something like a Nippon Ichi was bringing out these games that you couldn't get here in the West very easily,
Yeah.
especially if you didn't know Japanese and you didn't want to import stuff, which I never did. And still don't know Japanese. But that said, it's just a different landscape where things are more standardized now, especially even console region locking is not as much of a thing nowadays like it used to be,
Yeah.
to where it's easier to import games. It's easier to do a lot of these things, and so it is just a different market. You don't have to. I feel like publishers don't have to do as much work to bring games over as much as they used to. Or nowadays, maybe it's because of the proliferation of the internet as well, that just makes it to where we Westerners know about games coming out in Japan, something like that. But there's lots of releases that are kind of day and date Japanese and English as well. So anyways, all that to say is it's just a different kind of market that it's a little harder to kind of remember. Oh yeah, back in 2007, Japanese RPGs were not huge, you know,
Well,
and there was
yeah,
a chance that this niche Japanese game is probably wouldn't come to America. You know, not even might not, but probably won't.
yeah. There, I mean, there was a lot of stuff that never came stateside, just as a general rule, and that's still the
Hmm.
case to a certain extent. But like, I would say also to just kind of like think about what was dominating the like what the sort of the highlights of the zeitgeist were. It was like Grand Theft Auto 3 and Grand Theft Auto Vice City were like the big things.
Yeah.
Um, it was also Final Fantasy 12, I think, dropped around around
Oh
that
wow.
same time period.
Hmm.
Um, so like, and Final Fantasy, like, I mean, prior to Final Fantasy 7, Japanese that side of like Japanese devs, they just didn't get the attention, right?
Right.
And so you had things like and again like the Nippon Ichi especially was just like such a niche develop or publisher where they were
Yeah.
just bringing over like um and again there's obviously like Disgaea, and they've I think the Prinny characters have a series
Hmm.
of games now as well. But I mean the one that is sticking out to me that I'm thinking about is Phantom Braid
Yep.
and or
Yep.
Phantom
Brave. Yeah.
Brave.
Hmm.
Um, and there are a couple others in there. Again, like they've released re-released some of these games on Switch in collections, which and again I totally plan on picking all them up because uh, there's just like there's something about the games of that era that is just I think completely. I think what I will say is like Odin Sphere is a little bit transcendent in the thing that it doesn't feel as much as a timepiece, like
Okay.
locked in that era. Like
Yeah.
that, it feels a little more timeless than some of these other games. But yeah, a lot of that stuff, like Grim Grimoire. And again, at some point in time, I'm probably going to pick up the remaster and play through that
Hmm.
to like just to sort of go back and re-experience it. But like the, there was like games of a time in like the
Yeah.
early aughts where it's like
Yeah.
you when you play that stuff, it's like it has a very distinct like oh yes like
Hmm.
kind of vibe. And
Yeah.
there was like a lot of weird JRPG stuff, but again, it was sort of more niche. Like
Yeah.
the Artanelico games were
Okay.
coming out at that point in time. I was also kind of obsessed with those. Those were a weird JRPG visual novel thing. That,
Okay.
anyways, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm just kind of like thinking, like I'm
Hmm.
going back. Like this is a little bit of a time machine for me, just thinking about
Right.
Odin Sphere and
Right.
that
Yeah.
original. But yeah, like when this came out, like these were not it the availability. And
Hmm.
again, like just I think you said it is that we have like the internet now, and that in a lot of ways these things are just part of the scene. They're just like inherent,
Hmm.
but at that time they weren't. You couldn't take it for granted. There were a lot of things that, yeah, just even looking back, like to Bravely Default and
Hmm.
Pandora's Tower and
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
what was the other one? The Final Story or something like that.
The last
Um,
story.
the
Yeah.
Last Story. That whole there was like 3 or 4 games. Xenoblade Chronicles, I think.
Yep.
Like
Yep.
those 3 or 4 games, like none of those were slated for stateside release, and it was this
Right.
massive social media campaign to be like,
Hmm.
"Hey, we want this stuff. Bring it over."
Hmm.
Because it just like they a lot of that stuff, a lot of that Japanese developed stuff hadn't seen a ton of success as a
Right.
general rule stateside.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And frankly, game or excuse me, narrative adventures like those games they cost more money to translate in order
Yeah.
to bring over here. So you
Well,
have to have kind of a expected sales numbers to at least recoup that cost.
I think like translation wasn't quite like now localization is much more robust than it used to
Mhm.
be.
Yeah.
I think there are like entire sub teams within studios that are just dedicated to that.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and
Yeah.
that was not a concern, I think, then. Like back
Mhm.
then, it was like you would usually contract
Yeah.
localization out. I'm trying to think of the Lunar Games. There was a
Working designs.
Working Designs. Like
Yep.
that's
Mhm.
yeah, Working Designs did historically like that's what they did. They were just a localization outfit, and they got the
Right.
publishing rights for stateside and localized it and did. But yeah, there's something just anyways, just a
Yeah.
weird kind of like time in video game history.
Yep. Yeah. And yeah, it plays into that. So last thing I'll say before we move on to the next game, because I feel like there's a lot to say about the next game, is that kind of the downside to the striking visuals and the striking art style of these games. It has to do with Grim Grimoire, and you can speak into Odin Sphere if this is the case. But with Grim Grimoire, it takes place in this magical school, kind of Harry Potter type setting. But there are some design choices throughout the game of certain characters. As I was looking at images of the game and some gameplay and stuff like that, I did notice there were some enemies that are scantily clad and put in positions that are overly sexualized. And it's very unfortunate because I do really like the art style. I
Mm-hmm.
like what George brings to the table in terms of his art style. But there are just certain choices that I absolutely do not like. And Nate had mentioned something even before we started recording of like, this is a type of game that if my wife walked into the room, that I'd have some explaining to do.
Yeah.
And it's and so I'll say that there are characters like that in at least in Grim Grimoire, which is absolutely unfortunate. Like I don't like that exists. I don't like that that's in the
I would
game.
I would say that it's sort of it's something where Odin Sphere doesn't feel tremendously fan servicey. It's a little
Mhm.
fan servicey. Like
Okay.
I mean, just it's a little bit, but it's not there's a particular boss design. There's one particular boss design that's pretty again like and I would just say it's kind of yeah, that one particular boss fight I'm thinking of in Odin Sphere is a little it's fan servicey, but it's also pretty grotesque. Well,
Hmm.
it's just like there's a lot of like this is a very Japanese studio, and
Yeah.
especially at this point in time, like what what that meant certain things. Like you were just going to get like fan servicey junk, where it's
Hmm.
like the women were going to be hypersexualized and kind of just always drawn in these kind of provocative positions.
Hmm.
It's inherent in like just they just leaned on fan service a lot.
Yeah.
And some of that is cultural. I'm not saying it's good. I'm just saying that's like kind of just a flavor, and it's of so.
Yeah.
And I think Odin Sphere again is a little fan servicey. Not I don't remember outside of like that one boss encounter. I don't remember anything like too grotesque. Yeah, and
Okay.
again, like Grim Grimoire, I do remember a little bit then. I think the biggest offender is probably Dragon's Crown. Um,
Right. Right.
it,
Yeah. And
but
and we'll get to that. I just wanted to mention it because I didn't want to,
this is sort of a
just in case
thread.
someone looks
Like
into it.
this is like the big caution
Yeah.
is like even with 13 Sentinels, which is pretty tame for the most
Hmm.
part, they just kind of can't help but be a little tittillating.
Yeah.
They
Pervy. Yeah.
a little pervy. Like it's
Yeah.
and it's not like horribly offensive from what I've seen in
Oh, you're
13
talking
cent.
about Aegis. It's
Yeah,
like I think sometimes it can be, but
yeah,
not talking about Aegis. Yeah,
yeah. I mean, Dragon's Crown
yeah,
and
yeah.
Odin
That's the
Sphere,
offender.
like Dragon's Crown is just like there are two characters that I think just flat out Christian men, especially,
Hmm.
probably should not pick if they play that game.
Right,
Um,
right. Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, but that's just me. Like maybe somebody could play those two character types and be just fine. Like I'm not the one that you would have to justify that to, you
Hmm.
know.
Yeah.
Um, but I'd said with Odin Sphere and 13 Sentinels, again, it's a little there's like little fan servicey stuff, but it's not the over the top, just insane kind of like what that
Yeah.
some of
Yeah.
what Dragon's Crown brings out.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
um,
Cool.
but
Good to know.
I think the game that you were kind of alluding to was Muramasa. That
Right.
like
Yes.
we're both big fans of this one, and I think
Hmm.
here's what I'll say, Josh. I think if you like Muramasa,
Hmm.
you'd really like Odin Sphere
Okay.
because they share a lot of the same DNA. Like I think
Hmm.
Muramasa is probably a little tighter, and
Okay.
it's a little it's got I think some more interesting systems than Odin Sphere,
Hmm.
but they've kind of got the same heart. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. That makes
s-
sense. That
so
makes it because they're both obviously all these games are 2Ds but are 2D games, but they're both kind of not even hack and slash, but kind of
they're 2D brawlers,
yeah, yeah.
platforming brawlers. Like
Hmm. Hmm. And so they do share at least those mechanics in common. But Muramasa, the Demon Blade, I played it on Wii. And it's funny. I remember, brings back memories for me. Is that when I first got my Wii, which was kind of like getting back into video games after I had gotten married, and just something to pass the time. I used to like video game because there was a while, a few years where I just wasn't playing anything, focusing on other stuff. But I see a Wii for sale, $40 or whatever. Okay, I'll pick that up. And then, and so I go looking around to see, okay, what are some of the highest rated games for the system, and what can I pick up for cheap and whatever. And so I find this game, Muramasa. It's highly rated, and again, VanillaWare. Love the art style.
mhm.
Muramasa is it's a 2D brawler, and it is set in feudal Japan. And it uses a lot of Japanese like folklore, with its enemy designs
You're
and boss
fighting
designs
Oni.
and things like that. Yes, that's right. That's right.
Mhm,
Demon Blade. There you go.
mhm.
And you're cooking up meals and you're forging different blades and
That's
and things like
something
that.
you kind of I don't want to spend too much time, but like the
Mhm.
food in the food design and presentation in
Yeah.
VanillaWare is always top shelf. It's
Yeah.
always just like you look at that and you're like, I would eat that.
Uh-huh.
I
Right.
it like the food stuff always makes me like the different like meal sequences or whatever. Like when they show the dish, I'm like, I'm kind of hungry now. Like it's just
Yeah.
it's so yeah.
Yeah.
So
It is.
it's like it's a weird sort of like little note, but if you play a VanillaWare game, you'll see what I mean. Where it's just like when they're like, hey, like because there's like a food mechanic in Odin Sphere too, where it's like you can visit
Okay.
restaurants and sort of order dishes and yeah. So
Okay. And it is a decent little chunk of the game in
hmm
Muramasa as well, is the cooking mechanic that you use throughout the game. So, um, anyways, I really loved this game. Apparently, I don't remember this, but apparently in researching again, it's a short game. It's only 5 hours for each character, each one. So
that's if
not
you're
very long at all.
burning through the campaign, but a lot
I
of
guess
times
so. Yeah.
I mean, I remember playing same levels multiple times just
Yeah.
because, like, you're grinding for resources because there's this whole upgrade system with the swords and
Hmm.
everything, or the blades and everything else that, yeah, um, it can be pretty grindy.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
it can. It can. But I mean it feels very good too.
yeah,
It's fast and fluid, and numbers are going up as you're attacking people,
Mhm.
and it's very stylish as well. I think of when your sword breaks on you and just a little animation of the snapping blade that appears up on the screen. It just feels really good, and I mean, frankly, it's one of my favorite games on the Wii, for sure. And it's just I've got nothing but good memories for
Yeah,
this game, and even looking into it, it makes me want to replay it.
it's kind of a shame because like out of all of the libraries stateside, that's the one that there's no great way to play it now. It's
Mhm.
either it's trapped on the Wii, or there was the PSP port, and that's where I played. I played on the
It's a
PSP
Vita port, but
or the
yes.
Vita port, yeah.
Mhm.
And that's where I played it. And yeah, it's just like I remember just being absolutely smitten with that game and being like, oh yeah, like it's like I actually I played Muramasa Demon Blade, and then I found out the Odin Sphere stuff was coming back, and it was like
Okay.
I was like get hyped. I was like, yes, like
Yeah.
give me all of that again. Um so yeah, it's but Muramasa, it again, it's just charming, and actually, like, I wouldn't even say the fact that it's like a short playthrough. I don't think that's a bad thing. Like
Mhm.
as I've gotten like a little older, and I'm just like, and again, the often repeated refrain from me is like, yeah, games are too long. Like that game's
Mhm.
too long. Like we were just talking about Sakana, where I'm like, yeah, it's like 15, maybe 20 hours too long. And I'm like, give me something that's snappy, like 10, 15 hours, and I can
Mhm.
sort of like get in, get out. And I'm now that we're talking about it, even, I'm like, man, I might
Just wanna play it again.
go dig out my Vita and charge it up and just see if I
Yeah.
can sort of like roll through this again. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's I think, like I said, it's just it's practically criminal. And I would imagine, if I had to guess, I would imagine that one of the reasons, I mean, I don't know what kind of numbers that game sold. I mean,
Mhm.
it was on the Wii, and
Ri and
so
yeah, it did not do very well.
okay.
At least, yeah, not on the Wii, because it's very different for the style of games that were on the Wii.
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe it did not do very well, and then they released it on the Vita, and I don't know how well it did on the Vita. I can't imagine it would do that great just because of the install base.
It's just
But
it's and again, it's that kind of the I'm just googling
mhm. Well,
uh
since you're Googling, I'm going through just some key art for the game, and as I'm looking at some of the characters, I'm remembering, okay, there are some character designs in this as well, female designs that are very exaggerated. I don't think it's too over the top like some other games, but it is exaggerated.
no,
Okay,
it's a
there's
little
there's
more
still some fan service.
it's definitely more subdued than like um
Yeah,
Dragon's Crown, but that's like easy.
right,
Like
yeah, pretty much any video game is more subdued than Dragon's Crown.
um
Dragon's Crown is very much in your face, but yeah,
I
it's
can't find any sales numbers, no easily accessible sales numbers for Muramasa, but yeah, so
yeah. Uh, so it's funny. I really enjoyed this game. I don't really have much anything else to say that comes to mind, except that I really like the game. Like, it's definitely in my top 100.
if you and I think what I would say is, if you enjoy, like, to the listeners, to the viewers, if you enjoy 2D side scrolling, like sort of beat 'em up platformy kind of games, Odin Sphere and Muramasa will not disappoint. Like they're a
Mhm.
good time.
Yeah.
Like they're clever, they're mechanically not super robust, but not absolutely dead. Like they're kind of like that middle ground. Like when we were talking about Sakano of Rice and Ruin, it was like the combat's good. It's not like it's not super difficult or super punishing or super technical.
Mhm.
It's good. It feels good, but it's not the most interesting thing. Where it's like it's
Mhm.
good. It's not great, but it's good, and good is okay. Um, and it's just like they're visually just absolutely, they're just some of the most striking games that you'll ever see. I think too, like, they just ooze style. They
Yeah.
ooze style and charm, and it's just like, okay, Like, and I'm not always a sucker for that, but when I bite, I like that hook just sinks. Like just it,
Hmm.
they kind of got me by the, got me and they're just dragging me around.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
would just say that that's like, so yeah, I, again, if you like 2D side scrolling platformers, like it's an easy recommend for me on both of these. Like, and they go like Odin Sphere goes on sale fairly often.
Hmm.
And usually it's not that hard to like, you could probably go to your local game store and find a copy for reasonable. I can't imagine it being super, super cost prohibitive or anything like that. So,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. I'm seeing just as I scroll through eBay, Muramasa, I'm surprised, goes between, I'd say maybe 35 at the
mhm.
cheapest on Wii, um, anywhere to 35 to
I
$50,
was
which I'm
looking
like,
too,
wow.
and I was like, hmm.
Because I want to say my copy was like dirt cheap when I picked it up, maybe like $13
I
from GameStop or something,
The Wii U
but
still works, and I'm like, I would not mind
just popping it in,
just
playing
popping
it
it in
again.
and playing
Yeah.
it. That might be easier than trying to charge it, see if like hopefully my Vita still works kind of thing. Um, but I think moving on here
Hmm.
to the last couple of entries, and again, I
Yeah.
haven't beaten either one of these, but I have played them, and these are pretty significant departures. I
Hmm.
think that we have to like at the core there is like that super striking design.
Hmm.
Like these games, just like the character design is beautiful, the enemy design is beautiful, the like every aspect of the art is just top shelf,
Hmm.
like gorgeous. But Aegis Rim is not a 2D side scrolling beat 'em up. There it's actually sort of like an interactive like visual novel thing
Hmm.
mixed with some tactical turn based play. And what I would say is like the one sort of critique I actually have of Aegis Rim is that the combat sequences when you're doing like the tactical stuff, it's
Hmm.
visually it like it does sort of a visual swap where it's like
Yeah.
you've got those beautiful characters and the design, and then when you're doing the tactical combat stuff, it goes like there's this, you'll see like these maps of the city, and then it's almost like these space invader icons pop up,
Hmm.
and that's how, and it's kind of jarring because like frankly it's like, and I don't know if it was, I don't know what the reasoning was behind that. I
Yeah.
mean, maybe they just wanted to do something different. Maybe they were running low on funding, which again
Yeah.
is kind of an issue with VanillaWare as a general rule. But I would have loved to have seen some of those the mech models and the enemy models like on screen. Even it's a really blown out view too, but
Hmm.
it would, I think it just would have been cool if like I could have seen the mechs and the enemies and like fight duking it out
Yeah.
on these maps. But I mean, the gameplay is good. What I will say is like I kind of dipped out because I had to drill down on some stuff for the podcast last year.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
and that kind of pulled me away from it. But it's a really robust, like if you like tactical turn-based stuff, it's a really robust system. There's some interesting builds.
Okay.
Um,
Hmm.
yeah, so it's
Nice.
not it's not too wild, but and just the loop is good. The gameplay loop is good. The
Yeah.
combat feels good. So if you like tactical stuff, it's if you like I said, if you can kind of get past the fact that the actual combat is pretty minimalist, um,
Hmm.
it's still pretty good. Like the visual side of combat is pretty minimal. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
so, but that's
That's cool.
and then I played a little bit of like I touched a little bit of the demo for Unicorn Overlord.
Hmm.
Um, and what I can say is like it's super pretty. Uh,
Okay. Okay.
it's and I think it's probably the most different in that
Hmm.
this one, like you set up your units and stuff. You set up your units, but the way that combat sort of like falls out, it there's no direct control over units. Does that make sense? Like
Okay.
you're
Yeah. Yeah.
almost playing more of like a commander over an army, and
Mm-hmm.
you set up your units, you assign units, and you assign movements and stuff, and then you watch that play out.
Okay. So
Um,
so is that similar to like Ogre Battle?
Ogre Battle tends to be a lot more like Ogre Battle is more like Final Fantasy Tactics, where this is like you don't do any like move controls. It's literally you set up your units, you sit like,
Right.
and then they just
Right.
you tell
Sorry.
them where to go or whatever, and then it's like they just do their thing. You don't
Yeah.
tell them what moves to use or anything like that. There's none of that. Um,
So you might be thinking of Tactics Ogre. th- Is the
oh
one that's like Final Fantasy Tactics Ogre Battle, March of
yeah,
the Black
I
Queen
was
on
thinking like
Super
Tactics
Nintendo.
Ogre, maybe Ogre Battle. I'm not super familiar with Ogre Battle,
Okay. Okay.
so
Yeah, I've played a little bit of the one on Super Nintendo and then played through the one on 64. And it sounds similar. You have like, yeah, you have, I think, I can't remember how many guys you can have in your little parties, but you set them out, and then when they do battle, like, you don't control any of it. They just do according to the units that you've set up and how
mhm.
they want to attack. So that's what it sounds like to me. But yeah, I've heard nothing but good things about Unicorn Overlord. Frankly, I haven't looked too deeply into it because I don't want to add another game to the backlog. But I'm sure it will end up there
I mean,
because, again,
at the
nothing
time
but
of
good things.
recording, I think you looked at it. It's
Yeah,
$30.
$30. It's
It's
on
only
sale. Yeah,
$30, dude. Come on,
right.
dude.
Yeah,
Just do
just
it.
do it.
Just
Just
do it,
do it.
dude.
Pick it up. Buy it. Do it now. Yeah, it's even cheaper than Muramasa on Wii. Um, yeah.
What are you
So
waiting for? Just do it.
and I've heard it's one of the best games of
Don't
last
let your
year.
dreams be dreams, Josh.
Let it be a backlog. Um, yeah, so I'll go in reverse, but I don't have as much to say because I haven't played Aegis Rim. It is one that I've heard really good things about. The only thing I'll add to what you said is that it's 13 different characters. Funny anecdote about that is just because it came out in, I believe it was 2023, something like that, and so they chose 13 characters. Some like offhand reason. There wasn't any real reason behind 13 characters, but there are, and the game plays in such a way that the story unfolds with each character, and you choose what character and how far in their
Yeah.
story to go at each time. It does lock out
There
at
are
certain
soft
points.
locks,
Yeah.
yeah.
But that said, that means that the developers needed to hash out every scenario in such a way that if you didn't have the information from this other, interaction, that you could still the story is still understandable no matter which choice you make,
Well,
and
and
you have 13 different
it's
characters to
flow
do that with.
charty. So
Yeah.
like, and you can
Yeah.
replay the same sequence over and over and over and over and
Yeah.
over again. So yeah.
So it just, that sounds to me extremely complicated, and the fact that they pulled it off is really cool. So this is one that I definitely want to get. I know it's been on sale a couple times. I'm sure I'll pick it up sometime
It
soon. But
and I'm not I know we were talking about 999 earlier, and you were telling me that those games sort of have like a flow chart kind of thing, and you could go back,
yes,
and I imagine that's comparable to
pretty
that.
similar. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And so
yeah. Because
you
both
can sort
visual
of rip
novel.
through like some of those sequences really quick to get to what you
Yeah,
need to. So
yeah. Awesome, awesome. And since I'm working backwards, so we didn't really talk much about Dragon's Crown. We just kind of skipped over it.
well, I was
Things I'll
saving the
say.
worst for last.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's what you're doing. Is that so George Kamatani worked on some of the Dungeons and Dragons games when he was working for Capcom, excuse me, early on in his
Mhm.
career in video games. So this is an ode to those games, a modernized version. So I say modernized, but I mean that in the sense like deeper, more complicated version of those types of games. I have heard that it is a great mechanically, it is a great game. I own it on PS3. I never got around to playing it because of what we mentioned earlier. Is I feel like if I played this for any considerable amount of time, that if my wife were to look at the TV, I would have some explaining to do, simply because of a lot of the character models in this game. Um, while it does continue to have a, I would say, gorgeous art style, it is the most exaggerated out of anything else that they've ever put out. There was even controversy when the game came out, with a lot of American publications that said that the female characters were over sexualized, and then there was talk of, oh, it's not just the female characters, everyone is. Why are you getting so up in arms about it?
Yeah.
Which is, I feel like, is just such a
I mean,
any.
there, like, listen, there is merit to that argument, like, in the sense that, like, this is a game that really leans into the swords and sorcery tropes of, like,
Mhm. Yep.
Conan the Barbarian
Yep.
and Red Sonja, and, like, just, like, turns all of that up to 11, right?
Right. Yeah, characters with tons of muscles, exaggerated features, and very, very little clothing. That
Yeah,
kind of fantasy
yeah,
style. Yeah.
and it's and one of the things Josh and I said is, like, especially sort of in the case of two of the female characters,
Mhm.
it's like, it's, to me personally, like, it's a little grotesque, and I would say,
Yeah,
like, if you find that to be,
absolutely.
like, appealing, you might want to do some self-examination there.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but it's like, it doesn't change the fact that this is by far the most fan service. Like,
Mhm.
this just takes the fan service and just, like, leans all the way into it.
Yeah.
And it's really unfortunate because, yeah, and I've played some of this as well. And
Mhm.
I do want to go back and finish it because what you said is, like, it is a real, technically, it's one, I think it's, in some ways, it's a 2D side scrolling beat 'em up, right?
Mhm.
Um, but it's also really masterfully done. And there's, like, lots of really cool visual stuff. Like, it's what I was telling you is,
Mhm.
like, again, like, the way that, like, it moves, like, you move through the environments, it sort
Mhm.
of puts these things almost on like a cylinder, and it's very stylized. And, like, when you see it, you're like, oh, that's actually really cool.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
the combat is really pretty robust. There's, pretty in-depth,
Mm.
like, leveling system. It's technically, and I think, like, now the Dungeons and Dragons Capcom games, like, they would do this thing where, like, you could move between different, not levels, but, like,
Mhm.
in the what would be, like, the horizontal plane of the game, like, you can move between different lanes, and
Yeah.
there's also some of that in the game as well, and it adds just, like, sort of a level and a technical finesse, a level
Mhm.
of of finesse that I think, and so it's a game that, it's the game that I have, like, the strongest caveats for, like, hey,
Right.
like,
Right.
I wasn't, like, trying to, I felt like this was probably the best place to end the the conversation, was in talking about this game,
Okay.
right?
Okay. Yeah.
Because, like, everything else we can kind of say, like, hey, there's some fan servicey elements, but overall it's pretty ignorable. It's not to say that it's completely ignorable, but it's not like, and again, if you're sensitive to that stuff, like, obviously don't play it, don't tempt yourself, don't
Right. Right.
don't whatever. But it's like, some of it's fairly, it's pretty tame. Dragon's Crown doesn't shy away from anything, and
Mhm.
it's not pornographic, but it's as close to not being, like, it gets as close in some ways to that line without crossing it as
Mhm.
is possible.
Yeah.
And that's kind of dangerous.
Yeah.
And again, like, even if you were to just play the male characters, I think just, like, some of the enemy designs are,
Yeah.
you know,
That's what I was gonna say. Yep. Mhm.
titillating. They're a little racy, and so you have to be pretty careful there. So it's
Mhm.
it's just one of those things where Dragon's Crown is, like, the hardest one to make an argument for, just
Right.
because, and again, like, the gameplay is there. It's probably in some ways one of the more interesting titles as far as gameplay and design from VanillaWare.
Mhm.
But yeah, the
Yeah. Because of all
Unfortunately,
those caveats. Yeah.
unfortunately, it's like the design choices leave a lot to be desired, um,
Hmm.
as far as the aesthetics go. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And that's that, you know, I was going to say it and you already did, is that I was just thumbing through some of the artwork for the game, and unfortunately it's not because okay, you can get away with, out of the, I believe it's 6 playable characters, maybe it's 5. 2 of them I would frankly never play as. I do not want them to be on the screen at all. Um
I wouldn't want
but
my kid to
okay,
see those. I wouldn't
right.
want to have to explain that to my wife.
It's
And
embarrassing.
yeah,
It would be embarrassing for me if anyone saw me playing it. And I don't even say that as a pastor. I say that just as like a regular person, you know?
as a
Uh,
like, listen, we are weeb adjacent.
right.
And so like
Right.
there's a lot of embarrassing stuff that we're just like, if somebody like rolled into our house, and it's not like perverse or disgusting, but it was just like, what are you watching? Uh you know, like
Yeah.
I I don't we already talked about like just the exercise in futility that is trying to explain anime anyways.
Mhm.
Um so
Yeah.
but yeah.
Yeah, but unfortunately, it seems as though, like you mentioned, it's also some enemies, or at least some characters you come in contact with. I don't even know if they're enemies or like, you know, shopkeepers or whatever, but it seemed as though there's some key art for characters that are, um, even if they're not playable, they're again something that I just would not want on screen. So unfortunately, I mean, I feel like even doing this episode, like I don't think my PlayStation 3 copy is ever going to see any playtime, because this just pushes it further into the back burner, because I don't know when I would ever play it if no one else could be around while I play. And it just, and at that point, like, why would I even want to? It's like, frankly, the Vita version would be the most playable version for me because I can hide it from anyone else. But at that point, like, am I just playing the game to get through another game?
Yeah.
Because that doesn't even sound like I would enjoy it, even though I could see the quality of the gameplay. It wouldn't be enjoyable any longer. So
Yeah, like
yeah,
even
it's a
you
shame.
saying that kind of like it acts like a bit of a break for me in some ways. Like,
Yeah.
it kind of like it throttles some of that down a little bit, where it's like, hey, like eventually, yeah, I'd like to like play through this, but it's like I think if I do start it up, it's going to be like you're on pretty thin ice, and the minute like it gets like, do you know what I'm saying? Where I would just say
Yeah.
like, yeah, like this is pretty easily going to be like, no thanks.
Yeah.
Like I own it and I want to play it, but if you get like a little too whatever, like we're just done.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Which is a shame because, especially, like, I've heard it's a really good co-op game too. And I've
yeah.
played, you know, Shredder's Revenge with my kids. Like, this is the type of game mechanically that I would want to play with my kids.
Well,
But
and I think Parker and I have talked about playing it together, and so
yeah.
it's like one of those things where if like I think like the thing is like if he were to like throw down and be like we shouldn't be playing this, that would be like the sure sign for where it's like I'm just like, okay, like let's just kill the thing, like let's just forget about it.
Yeah.
Because he
Yeah.
tends to be the a voice of reason for me
Hmm.
sometimes, where he's like,
Sure.
hey, like have you thought about this? And I'm like, I don't want to, shut up. Like,
Nice.
um but the good friends do that for you, and
Yep.
even this
Yep.
conversation where it's like I was like, ah, yeah, someday I'll play it, and then I'm like, well, maybe, but also maybe not.
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
so yeah, it's
If they
but
ever make like Dragon's Crown minus edition, you know, where they actually like tone down all that stuff,
or
even
at
if it's like
least
a
they
joke game.
just put like more clothes on things,
Right.
that'd just
Right.
be fine.
Yeah.
um
That would be hilarious. Can you imagine? But
and I
that's not
so
going to happen.
I think just sort of like landing the plane is like this is a
Mhm.
developer that both of us have a lot of affection for,
Yeah.
and we do especially recommend Muramasa the Demon Blade. And like
Mhm.
listen, like folks, here I'm just gonna say it. If if, and this is a major if, especially at this point in time, there's ever like a remake or a remaster of that game, do not
Mhm.
hesitate to pull the trigger on that. Like it's
Yeah.
full like I see that, it's like boom, money, gimme. Like
Mhm.
and so and I think Josh would probably like co-sign on that. Maybe not that enthusiastically, but
Yeah, yeah, I'm like 95% there unless like you and or anyone else in your household is really sensitive to fan service. Again, there's not very much in it, but it is there.
mhm.
And again, I didn't even remember it until thumbing through some of the art here recently. So, and I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, that was there." And it wasn't just me being like, "Oh, that's weird." It's like, no, actually, this is, even researching for this episode, I'll say that as we land the plane, is I didn't realize how prevalent that was through the entire catalog, if that makes sense. There's always one or two characters that's just like,
Yeah.
okay, you threw that in there just to be,
There's
you
always
know,
an element
just to
of
be
fan
pervy.
service to these games.
Yeah.
And it just like your mileage may vary.
Yeah. Yeah.
For some people that's not going to be a deal breaker. For some people that's not going to be like a stumbling block or a real issue, and that's fine. And for others, it's like if that's a struggle, if that is a stumbling block, like hey, like there's no shame in dipping out. Like these games are
Mhm.
cool, but they're not necessary.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
And I will say, the final thought, sorry, is that because of all the backlash that Dragon's Crown received, even though it sold
Mhm.
really well, it seems as though they have backed away quite a bit from that. I know of one character in Aegis Rim that is a bit more exaggerated than the other characters. I
Mm.
have not heard of anything in Unicorn Overlord, but I haven't looked extensively at a lot of the artwork. Because again, I don't want to look too deep into the game because I don't want to put another game on my backlog. Because I've heard it's really good.
For
So
now.
so they're right. So I'm saying that like kind of the silver lining is it seems like there's less of that nowadays. Now their next game they could
Well, and
flush all that
I
down the
would say,
toilet,
like,
but
I think too, like, just the culture has shifted
mm,
significantly. Like,
hmm
when Odin Sphere came out, when Muramasa came out, when Crown came out, like, and yes, there was like some pushback and some people, but it's like that wasn't a big deal. Like, fan service was just kind of like the norm.
hmm
Um, and to a certain extent, I'm not going to say that it wasn't like, but it was just like, like pervy Japanese game going to be pervy. Like
yeah,
it's just kind of like, and I think now we live in a culture where there are conversations about some of that stuff that are a little more prevalent.
hmm
And so, yeah, I would just say like it's it is different now, and
yeah,
some of the things that were done, you're just not going to get those. Like,
hmm
you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't like if Dragon's Crown came out today. There, well, I don't know, because like also, yeah, I don't know. There's a lot more permissiveness in some ways too.
sure,
So who knows? But yeah, it's VanillaWare. Like, it's their games are beautiful, but like there's a little bit of degen in there that you got to worry
right.
about. Like,
Right. Yeah. Well, and that again, that kind of sums up to me like this guy Kamatani is like he's a great artist. Sometimes he uses that to draw some perverse things. You know what I mean? So,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
With
It's
a great power came great responsibility and he doesn't always wield that well.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So,
So,
it's yeah, it's we just thought it would be fun to have a conversation about one of
mhm,
our sort of like favorite cult classic developers, and maybe sort of just throw some thoughts out there for our brothers and sisters, and for anybody listening. It's like, hey, these games are pretty good. They're really beautiful, and yeah, there are some warnings to be heeded.
yeah,
So, yeah,
there you go.
but.
All right, man. Well, that was a good conversation. I think the conversation was anything but vanilla. Get that pun in there one more time. But
Why?
before
Why? Ugh.
just because we
See,
can.
it's uses like that that actually devalue the word itself.
It's
Like
true.
you
Yeah,
you
it's
are
true.
making the word actively worse every time you do that.
Yeah. I agree, and yet I still continue to do it. I
Uh,
know the thing that the thing that I do that I don't want to do.
I do the thing that I don't want to, and I don't do the things I know I ought to.
Right,
Yes.
right,
Okay.
exactly.
Okay. Okay.
But before we head out for the evening, we do have a couple more forms to follow. The first of which is our community shout out. We like having a community, whether that's in Discord, whether that's on YouTube in the comments section, whatever. We've got our community, and we've got some shout outs for that community. And my shout out this week goes to a bot. It goes out to PorchoBot because I just thought it was so much fun to see him pop up in our Discord. And I say that one of our members, Porcho, he's a patron, made himself a little bot, or there was a bot made that he used for a little while to interact for a while. That may or may not have been pretty convincing for a little bit until he revealed everything that I've been saying on this certain subject was an AI bot. And he just kind of copied and pasted that. And I thought that was funny. So shout out to you, PorchoBot, because you made me laugh. So,
Okay.
Nate, who do you have to shout out?
Basically, everybody who's been throwing us a sub on YouTube, you rule.
Ah.
So all the cool. I don't know why I put candy in my mouth. I'm eating Milk Duds, which are trash candy, but I still love them. But
Yeah.
I'm gonna mute myself for a second.
Okay. Yeah. Mute. And for those of you watching on YouTube, even though he's muted, you get to see him chew. Now, he's not like my son. He doesn't chew with his mouth open. I just threw my son under the bus. That was not very nice.
At least this time, I didn't do it this time.
Yeah.
But yeah, like for everybody who's been throwing us a sub on YouTube, that's really cool. Thank you. And if you haven't done that yet, what are you waiting for? Come on, get on it. Like, be cool like everybody else.
Do it.
Sub,
I'd like for you to like me.
like,
So,
and subscribe.
yeah.
And then share.
and ding the bell.
Ding the
for
bell.
Notifications.
Get all the
I don't
notifications.
know, whatever the YouTube people say. I don't know.
I don't know.
That's us now. We're YouTube.
We're
people.
YouTube people now, apparently.
There we go.
You know what I realized, Josh, is that
What did you
there is
realize?
another form that
There
we
is.
have to observe,
Uh-huh.
and we have not discussed what we were going to do for this one.
Well, that form comes in the form of a question, and that question is, what is your question? That's right. What is your question? So you have questions for us here on the podcast, and Nate and I had discussed, I suppose we had forgotten, that we would each bring our own question to the table and decide which was the best question. So I do have a question that was submitted.
Good.
That I will go ahead and answer.
I did forget that I made that suggestion.
Didn't want to throw you under the bus, but that was I had the same thought in preparation. Is that, oh no, we don't have a question? But then I was like, wait, no, we're each supposed to bring our own. So actually, we didn't have very many questions, frankly. We did receive a question, and I don't want to say it's a bad question. It is a good question. But there was one that was along the lines of, what is one of the most interesting anecdotes you have for one of your favorite games? And while I think that caused a lot of good conversation in the Discord, which I very much appreciate, I also felt that was a bit generic because I was thinking of things that I could say, but I'm like, you know what? We kind of cover these things whenever we're kind of adjacent to that topic. Like, I feel like I've thrown out like 3 or 4 anecdotes in this episode alone about VanillaWare. So rather than that one, another question that I saw from Mr. McKelvey in the Discord was, we know what Pokemon Nate would eat, but what about Josh? So I've got a few answers to that question. And the first 2 are just are kind of my runner-up answers. Okay. The first one is far-fetched because he comes with his own leek that you can cook him in, and that would probably, make him taste better. A bird cooked in his own leek. The second one would be a cherubi. If you know what a cherubi is, it looks like a little cherry. But then I thought, oh, that actually sounds like like a horror movie, because you think you just, eat a cherry and then blood starts dripping from your lips because you've just eaten a sentient being rather than I mean, can you imagine? Like, you go to eat a grape and all of a sudden it starts bleeding in your mouth? That
How
sounds
about
horrifying.
screaming?
Yeah. So maybe not a cherubi. um Okay, so the last two, which are kind of my real answer here. Okay, the first one that comes to mind, yeah, actually, this one's going to be second. This one's going to be second. The first one will be next. Second up is Magikarp sushi. Okay, because Magikarp is a trash Pokemon, and I hated him when I was playing Pokemon as a kid. And so you dice him up into some sushi, and that would be fantastic. Now I get it. Magikarp turns into Gyarados. He's worth having. I always had a Gyarados. Yes, he's great. But while he's a Magikarp, he sucks, and I hate him. And I would like to have him on some seasoned rice. That sounds delicious. It would just suck if
I'm just
any
going
other
to sort of
Magikarp saw
reiterate the
you.
fact that you're a monster for willingly consuming the flesh of sentient creatures. Um,
But I mean, isn't that what sushi is anyway? Like, what does it make a difference if it's
no,
Pokemon?
no, like fish. We have there's no conclusive evidence that fish have any awareness. In fact, most research
Okay,
indicates they have almost no awareness.
gotcha.
Um, so I
Yeah,
mean, also they're fish, so that's disgusting.
yeah,
Um,
but dogs have awareness. Are you saying you
I
can't
would
eat
not eat a
dogs?
dog.
Okay, ever?
That's
Under any
why I wouldn't eat a
circumstance?
dog,
Sorry.
because I'm pretty sure like listen, cow. Oh man, now we're getting into tricky territory because pigs
I
actually have demonstrated like a fairly robust. Uh oh, they should be so delicious.
yeah, right. It's your fault. Um,
It's your fault, you stupid pig. You taste
I
too
w-
good.
I was just kidding about the dogs. By the way, that was a joke,
Uh huh.
a
Uh
bad
huh. Uh
joke, but
huh.
it was a
Uh
joke.
huh.
Actually, that rolls perfectly into my first, my number one. It would be a mill tank, because you could get some steaks out of that cow. That would be pretty awesome. So definitely mill tank steak, mill
True
tank steak.
monster.
Yeah.
You are
Well,
a monster.
I
I'm
mean,
just
I
saying.
like steak, so be delicious.
See, no, and
Be delicious.
you went and you said this, and you sort of skipped past this because like you said, well, we kind of do this anyway. But I thought it was a good question, so
Okay.
I'm assuming we were kind of looking at the same one here. But our
Mm-hmm.
buddy Sojourner did ask, "What's the
Mm-hmm.
strangest or most interesting fact you know about a game? Be that in-game lore, development history, etc."
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I like the emphasis on what is the strangest fact you
Okay.
know about a
Okay.
game. Like
Yep.
I think
That's
like
fair.
him opening up with that. And so now I have to think, what is like the weirdest thing that I know about a
Odd.
game? Um and there was
Hmm.
some really actually heinous like you use the word interesting conversation or good conversation. I would say heinous. There's some absolutely cursed garbage that got brought up. Um
Wow. I must have amnesia then, because I don't I don't remember reading
There's
cursed
a lot
garbage.
of
But uh,
talk about Sonic, which
okay.
just is always disturbing to me. Um,
Oh, that's
uh,
right. That's right. Yeah, I guess that is cursed. That
yeah,
Sonic was
you're
always
welcome.
planned to have a
A
human
human
companion.
girlfriend.
Yeah.
Blech. Like
Wasn't it
up
like
until
Mona
recent,
Lisa or something like
that
that?
might be the strangest thing that I now know about a video game. Um, I always liked that line from like it's more of the Scott Pilgrim line.
Mhm.
You know, it's like Pac Man, Paku Paku.
Paku Paku. Yeah.
Paku
Yeah.
Paku. That was a good one. Um, I'm trying to think here. Hmm.
That Tetris was owned by the Russian government. That one's always fun.
Yeah, that one's always fun. There's like that, and that's the thing is like video games. There is just like there's a lot of shenanigans in just video game history.
Hmm.
Um, okay, like, and it's just something we've talked about, but it's like the strangest thing is that like, and it's not like a major secret, but like Shadow of the Colossus was supposed to have a lot more than
Mm.
like the 16 colossi or however many it is, like
Hmm.
a lot more, and that the design by deletion stuff was probably born more out of necessity just because the PS2 couldn't handle everything they wanted to do in the
Hmm.
game, and so they just started cutting out giant points. And um so I would say like that might be one of the strangest or most interesting things. And like when you're actually playing the PS2 version, there's a lot of stuff like where it's like there's stuff in that game, and it might even be in the recent remake or what, or remake, that remake that came out a few years ago for PS4. Um, it might even be there, but there's a lot of stuff in that world that seems like, oh, this could be used for something, and it has no point because that colossi was just sort of like the colossi that was supposed to like sort of tie into that got yoinked out of existence.
Hmm.
So yeah,
Yeah. I
that might be the strangest, one of the strangest things I know.
I don't know why it popped into my head, but one of the strange things that I know is that the character of Dan, who was introduced in
Oh
Street Fighter Alpha, was a joke character made because there was a rivalry between Capcom's fighting games and SNK's fighting games.
yeah,
So it's really just to poke fun at SNK. He was supposed to be a joke character who,
he sucks,
Mhm.
and he sucks on purpose to just
Yeah,
poke fun at SNK. Yeah,
right.
that's a good
And
one,
yeah, his move set is like similar to Ryu and Ken's, but worse. Like
but
weird arcs
garbage.
for kicks and not very powerful. And I just learned this as I was double checking when he was first introduced that that his style of fighting, it's this Japanese style, Seiyakyu Ryu, which just means the strongest style. So yeah, but
Okay.
he was originally a joke. I
Hey,
know I know he's been included in other ones. Like I don't think he's a joke anymore, but that's how he got
no, he's
started.
still kind of a garbage character.
Oh,
Like
okay,
he's
okay,
always, I don't think he's as much of a joke
Mhm.
anymore, but he's like not, he's like the crappier version of Ken and Ryu.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
because that's I've got a strange fact that will blow
Hmm.
your mind.
Okay.
Alucard is actually Dracula spelled backwards.
What?
Yeah.
Doctor Acula.
Dr. Acula. Oh man.
Oh
Um
my gosh.
yeah, I'm
Yeah.
sure that if I had actually spent time thinking about it, I could have come up with something. But that, I mean, that's the point of the question too, is like to um just have like a sort of off the cuff response to not think about it too much.
Hmm.
So um how did we decide that we were going to do this? Was it just like we're each going to bring one, and then at the end of the 6 months everybody's name goes in the hat?
Sure. Let's
Sure,
do that.
let's do that. So
Thank you for asking questions. So another second halfway but hearty hail and hearty shout out to you as well for asking questions.
yeah,
Isaac, your good
Isaac,
friend
Isaac,
and
and John both. And for
good guys.
listeners, new viewers, like listen, twice a year, we these questions, they're kind of important. One, we like doing it, but
Mhm.
two, at the in 6 months, at the end of 6 months, we're going to do a drawing
Throw all those
from the
names.
hat.
Throw the names in the hat. Shake of the hat. See who
Pull
wins.
a name out,
You
and
get
whoever wins,
$25.
you get $25 uh, in credit or whatever. Like, I guess we
Video game currency.
video game
However you like
currencies.
it.
So yeah.
Well,
So
currency
if
for
you
video games, not like
yeah, if you want
Zenny.
20, if you want a shot at winning $25, give us your best question.
Mm,
Yeah.
mm.
Or let us know what your question is.
What is your question?
That thing. Yeah.
That's always fun. And the last episode of every month, we answer those
Yeah.
questions. So this is the last episode of every month. It's been a fun
Not every month,
way.
this month.
of yes, the last episode of this month. And it's a fun way to end out January, asking some questions, talking about VanillaWare. It's been a good time.
Mm-hmm.
But you can ask us those questions tons of different ways. Hey, here on YouTube, if you just leave a comment and ask a question, on Discord, Facebook, however you want to get in contact with us, you can find all those different ways that we're on the internet on our link tree, which is linktree.com/the backlog breakdown. So check that out. There's links and descriptions and show notes and all that stuff as well. So reach out to us there, and we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, do it. Be cool.
Do it.
Yeah,
man.
But yeah, Josh, we were not good at brevity. Actually, the only thing we were good at is being bad at brevity tonight.
That's true.
So, but you know what? It was a good conversation,
Mhm.
enjoyable. Hopefully, you listeners, you watchers out there, audience members, hopefully you found it fruitful and fun. Like,
Yeah.
'cause that's
Hopefully we didn't wear you out. Wasn't too vanilla.
that was such a stretch, such a stinking stretch. Like, you're drunk, go home.
I mean, I mean, you didn't want me to make another vanilla pun, right? So
I'd rather no puns at all. Anyways, you know what? We just need to we need to end it.
Yeah.
All right.
That's probably a
Hey,
good idea.
folks, have a good night, good day, whatever. And we'll until next time, Josh, what should they do?
Guys, keep beating down your backlogs and we'll keep breaking down the benefits.
Sure.
I don't know why I said it like that.
The benefits.
Can you hear the music this time? Check under your chair. You get a benefit, and you get a benefit, and you get a benefit.
Benefits for everyone.
Oh my goodness. Can you hear the music this time?
Yeah, I can this time. Yeah, it was last time. It was like, no, I do not want to play the music.
Yeah. I just looked like an idiot bopping my head for no
I was
reason.
like, what is he doing?
Is he having a seizure?
You all right over there, buddy?
What's going on?